Hello and welcome. This is a podcast where I talk about whatever I want. I'm Johnnie and I'm a librarian. Let's talk about. Okay, so movies. Movies have a really special place in my heart because I grew up, everybody grows up with movies they love, but it was my grandmother that really drove home the benefit of watching movies and kind of losing yourself. So, I kind of dedicate this podcast to my grandmother because she really did a lot for me as far as raising me, but also showing me that movies are, it's a way to escape. Some of my favorite memories when I was an early teen, renting horror movies at on VHS, and we'd watch them together. She loved horror movies. She doesn't love horror movies now. She kind of softened as she got older, but some of our favorite movies, The Birds, Cleopatra, anything with Elizabeth Taylor, The Exorcist. We were, we love those movies. Anything Hitchcock. She really made my love for Hitchcock. It started, but then as I knew more about Hitchcock and as I became a friend with a Hitchcock scholar, wow, it just opened up a whole world of things. So, and I do consider myself a film buff. I am quite particular about my movies. And you can see some of my previous YouTube videos on my top favorite movies, horror movies. I think I have queer films, things like that. So VHS tapes were my original. I don't remember really owning any VHS tapes early on. One of the first ones ever gifted to me was Fantasia. I love that movie. Love the soundtrack. When I was in college, and I actually had a job working in the library, I did buy VHS tapes, like religiously. There was a huge catalog I would order from, and I'd spend at least $50 every paycheck on VHS tapes. The English Patient, the remastered Vertigo that came out, I fell in love with. Eyes Wide Shut. And there's a thing with when VHS tapes, this was strange to me, but during the time it was, because the video rental circuit was like a big deal, consumers weren't able to buy random movies when they came out unless they were willing to pay like $100 and then wait a few months and they dropped down to like $24.95 or $19.99. So that was, I remember getting Eyes Wide Shut on eBay. It was, you go to Suncoast and it's like, whoa, it's this much. Total Eclipse with Leonardo DiCaprio and David Thewlis. I remember, waiting for that to come out. I was obsessed with it. I saw a little TV guide blurb about it. And it's a movie. It's not a very good movie, I don't think. It's tawdry, not made very well, but the acting's good. Anyway, so yeah, it was, horror movies. My grandmother took me to see The Exorcist 3 in the movie theater. I can brag about that. That is definitely one of my favorite movies. It is wonderful. And if you're interested in the movie, the book Legion that it's based on is brilliant. But the original Exorcist, I remember seeing that when it came out again, the director's cut with the added scenes, the spider scene and the Ritalin scene. Seeing that with my now husband. We were dating at the time when we saw it. My grandmother was obsessed with Gone with the Wind. Of course, collected figurines. So Gone with the Wind was really Gone with the Wind and Cleopatra really, were like good movies to like base my taste on. Gone with the Wind's okay. It's a little long. Cleopatra's a little long as well. But yeah, I've always been a consumer of movies, and I still buy physical media, as does my library. We do buy Criterion, Arrow. Let's see what else. There's certain production companies that we buy from. I actually wrote an article where I interviewed, the last article I wrote, I interviewed someone from Breaking Glass Pictures, which is known for their LGBTQ content. Video Trust is the website that I've written for. I've actually just completed my third article for my column, essentially. Hopefully they'll want me to write more. I do enjoy writing about content, but it's centered around streaming content. But that's kind of getting ahead of myself. So I remember buying VHS tapes and having a huge probably 50 movies on VHS that I bought myself. And then when DVDs came out, the first movie I bought was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which actually is my favorite movie of all time. The acting is superb. Everything is amazing about that. Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, they're frickin' brilliant. I don't like to cuss, but they're frickin' brilliant. And it's not really cussing. But I bought that on DVD before I even had a DVD player. And then I remember buying Cleopatra, Jurassic Park. What else did I buy on VHS? On DVD. And then Blu-ray came around. Wow. DVDs were great. We were actively collecting DVDs, TV series, things like that. Are You Being Served? I have it on DVD. I love it. It's one of my top favorite sitcoms ever. The Golden Girls, actually, I love The Golden Girls. I don't have it on DVD. I hope one day they'll have it on Blu-ray, but it was made for TV, so we'll see. I did buy my mother the complete I Love Lucy series because I'm a fan, and she is definitely a big fan. And that consumerism with movies is, it's a part of capitalism and who we are as Americans. But also, I think going to the movies, the last movie I saw in the theater was probably Skyfall, the James Bond movie. It's been a while. I just have not gone to the theater. I get really discouraged when, there's people laughing at inappropriate times, and it's just kind of stressful. I used to go. The only time I go to movies was with friends or on a date. When I was first dating my husband, we saw so many, and I saved all the stubs for the movies we went to and the concerts, and I still have them, and some of the ink is faded because it's thermal. Blu-rays, remember the Blu-ray sort of HD showdown? Sony went out with their Blu-rays, and the first Blu-ray, what did I buy? I can't even remember. Of course, I have my favorite movies on Blu-ray, and I have quite a few Blu-rays. I probably have over 100 Blu-rays. TV series, I have a few of those, like Hannibal, Twin Peaks, just a few. And my library does buy some TV series. We have like Gilmore Girls, but that's on DVD. We have a few that we've just gotten that are like fan favorites, essentially. That do get checked out fairly often. And then the big thing that's happened, like in DVDs, that straddled Blu-rays and DVDs, has been the streaming Netflix. And Netflix, I remember Netflix when you would get the DVD, and I used to get that. I used to get like 3 at a time or something. So I get the max plan, and that really allowed me to see movies I'd never seen before. It was amazing. And you'd have your list that you'd curate, and you'd get the next one on your list, and when you sent the other one back. A couple times I got some cracked DVDs, but they took them back. It was fine. So the streaming, libraries didn't really catch on to streaming until, let's see, if it's 2023 now, I'd say probably maybe 2016 it started to be a thing. Unfortunately, all libraries, they can't have a Netflix account. They can't have Disney Plus, HBO Max. They can't have any of those. Those are for private viewing, and libraries, how do they distribute that content, that streaming content? And we struggle now with boutique films, which is like, hey, professor says, hey, I want this movie that's only available through this website. Here's a password. I need this for my class. What do we do? Do we save it? You can download it, or maybe it's a deep web thing. You need a password, and it's only for one person can access. Do we distribute that login and password? Libraries are struggling with that, and that's a problem. But for the consumer, it is a crazy time. I'm very, very impressed with Disney Plus, HBO Max. HBO Max has some Criterion titles, which I love, plus some amazing movies. I mean, and series. You pay, you get it. But the downside is, let's say we had a huge solar flare or something that just tore up all the electronics, or maybe all the satellites. Well, no more streaming service, and you don't own those things. You watch them on demand. But if you have physical media, as long as your electronics are working and they haven't, it's not obsolete, you can still view those things. Libraries have dealt with that with, like ProQuest, those ProQuest discs. So the library would get these ProQuest discs with articles on them, and they would stop getting physical items. What happens when, let's say, ProQuest went bust, and the software they used to access the discs, because they weren't straightforward, they were sort of all over the place. You couldn't access those. So that's a problem. And there are a few people out there, I would say a lot, but a few people, maybe, especially if they're in the film industry, physical media, they don't want it to die. And it's like books. People don't want books to die because they love touching the book. I read ebooks. I read physical books. I do not want to look at an art book, an Edward Hopper book, a Robert Mapplethorpe book, John Singer Sargent book. I don't want to see that on an electronic device. I want it in my hands. I want the tactile, to see the colors, to open the book, to actually do a sketch on a drawing or a painting that an artist did, to copy it or to do my own interpretation. I don't want a hard, cold electronic device where the battery could die, where I need sufficient light or power to do it. I want something I can, the lights go out, I can light a candle and still draw. I'm still that person. There's a Philip Zimbardo quote that says, books are an artifact of the heart. But guess what? Books are still being published. People still buy physical books. Libraries still buy physical books. When I curate what we buy, a lot of times it does center around art books, but also things that are that I think that would be difficult for the average person to look at online. An index is great, flipping to the back of a book. Anything book with pictures or charts, I think there's value in the physical item holding it. And so streaming, our library has streaming titles through Alexander Street Press, ProQuest, EBSCOhost. So we have good content, amazing content. But it's a lot of popular stuff isn't there. You want to watch a Marvel movie? No Marvel movies on our content. You want to watch a documentary on a commune? You can search. Yeah, there's a documentary on a commune. You're looking for specifics? Well, we'll see if we have it. We have operas, things like that. So it's and it depends on we have access to Swank as well as Canopy. Canopy is very expensive. Swank is also very expensive, and we don't actively participate in them. But there are options if we need to use them. But 4K. So the latest thing, it's been around a little while now, 4K. I have a few movies in 4K, like Apocalypse Now, Watchmen, Suspiria, Some Like It Hot. I mean, some of my favorite movies. 4K, if as long as you have a good TV and a good sound system, it's worth it. But if you're fine with DVD or Blu-ray, there's really no need for 4K. And really, the jump between DVD and Blu-ray, that's actually, there's some stuff in Blu-ray that there's a reason why there's never been a Blu-ray player on a Mac. And Steve Jobs said, we're not going to put a Blu-ray player in a Mac. It's a bag of hurt. That's his quote. Because there's all these keys that have to decode a Blu-ray, and they can't have to, it's built into a device, and that's why there's never been a Blu-ray player in a MacBook when they were still drives. And there is no Blu-ray drive for a Mac without, I say this, but you would need the software to decode the Blu-ray. There are Blu-ray players, writers, lots of Blu-ray writers, but can you pop in a Blu-ray and actually play it? You really, it's very difficult. There's a lot of things you have to circumvent, or even you need a specific program to look at it. So 4K, essentially it's a dual layer. A Blu-ray holds about 25 gigabytes. There are dual layer Blu-rays, which are 25 gigabytes each, so 50 gigabytes total for a disc. And the thing with a 4K disc is the picture is sharper. Older movies, like the last 4K movie I watched was The Company of Wolves with Stephen Ray and Angelica Houston. It's one of my favorite movies. I remember renting it when I was a teenager and just fell in love with it. Angela Carter, she did a really great job with the screenplay, and she wrote the short story it's based on. It's really if you're into movies, like for me, my favorite movies I'll buy in 4K. I love Alien, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I don't have Alien on 4K, but I would like to get it. The last one I bought on 4K was Suspiria, one of my top 5 favorite movies. I love it. The colors, it's beautiful, the story, everything. I'm talking about the original, not the remake. It's just, it's something if you're into movies, 4K is the thing. Where would they go from there? 8K? Yeah, there is such a thing as 8K. But can the average consumer watch that? Would they be able to tell a difference? It's like taking high-quality music and low-quality music and CD music versus streaming music, and can you tell the difference? It's a question. So the one thing that I'm excited about this year is 2 Peter Greenaway movies are out. Baby of Macon is one of my favorites of his, but A Z in Two Knots, the British Film Institute, is releasing that on Blu-ray, as well as Drowning by Numbers, which is lovely. If you've never seen Drowning by Numbers, it's just a fun movie. It's just fun. I like it. And I'm excited about that. I would love to see more director sets. Criterion's great. I love when they put out a whole director like Kurosawa. Fellini is coming out. Really good, solid collections. I love buying collections of stuff. I've actually been kind of disappointed with Criterion offerings for like the last year or so. Nothing has been very exciting. I haven't been like crazy excited about anything. Maybe if they put out a Luchino Visconti set, I'd go crazy over it, or a Peter Greenaway set, but it seems like Peter Greenaway is spread around, and it's all about who gets the rights to put them out. Speaking of rights, so Criterion put out a Blu-ray of Some Like It Hot, and then another studio, I forget which studio, I have the copy though, put out Some Like It Hot in 4K. Amazing movie. You cannot take your eyes off Marilyn Monroe. That movie and The Misfits, you cannot take your eyes off Marilyn. She's like a black hole on the screen. She's sucking everything in. It's very difficult to take your eyes off her. She's gorgeous. Her acting it's her. And it's hard to see her outside of the role. And The Misfits, has been a really, her then husband, Arthur Miller, wrote that for her. And she's like, is this what you think of me? She's kind of upset at that. He's like, well, yeah, I do. But, I wish, there's some movies that aren't even out on DVD yet. One of the ones at the library, Master Harold and the Boys with Matthew Broderick. It's not on DVD. There's some that have been, I wish they'd come out, because that VHS format, they don't make VHS players anymore. Or if they do, I'm not aware of it, because the last ones we bought were Samsung, were DVD VHS, and we have them in the library because we still have some VHS tapes that we bought. And we haven't weeded out. We have about 40 maybe that we've kept, because you can't find them on DVD, and not many libraries own them, so it is, I think, worthy to hold on to those as long as you can support the medium. But the thought experiment, I guess for the future, I see any movie, any TV show at your fingertips. And, of course, I'm sure you'll have to pay for it. Remember the 80s argument like, well, if I didn't have to pay for all these channels, cable would be cheaper. Well, guess what we're doing now? We're paying for all these services. We put ourselves back into the same arena. We can now pick and choose, but guess what? Now you have all these subscription services. Now we're back to where we started at. A little bit better, but we've kind of dug ourselves in the same hole as consumers. But we do like to be entertained, and we do like to lose ourselves. But imagine in the future, at your fingertips, any movie, any TV show. And you can curate your list, kind of like Spotify. Maybe on Wednesdays you watch an episode of, one thing and then another. And it knows, whenever you sit down at your device you're watching it from, you don't have to think much. It just starts. And you're in that zone. Or maybe Fridays and Saturdays are your movie nights, and you can select which movies you want to watch, and everything is digitized. I mean, that's just amazing. So what would some of your days look like when you're watching, these things, like an evening? What would you unwind to? Maybe a TV show, a movie. The thing with movies are TV shows, you can watch different episodes, but movies are special. It's an hour and a half chunk of your time you have to sit there and sit through. It could be 2 hours. It could be 3 hours. It depends on the movie. And I know a lot of us, our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. What does that say about us as information consumers? Will movies continue to get shorter and shorter, or will it just be catering to older people that have attention spans that last? People can sit still without fidgeting and squirming and feeling like they're being tortured. But anyway, that's my take and sort of a library perspective thrown in of movies. And so, VHS. I never had a Laserdisc, but I did watch a Laserdisc of a woman giving birth underwater in high school, which scarred me. All the different formats, and libraries, as long as you have the format, you support it. So we have in the Media Center, we do rent out VHS players, DVD players, Blu-ray players, HD Blu-ray players now. What's the future going to look like? With so much content, and it's getting more convenient to flip through your app on your TV or on your device, your Apple TV, and find that. Anyway, so that was this episode, the third episode. I appreciate everybody's comments, and I hope I'm somewhat informative, entertaining, and you get to know a little bit about me. So thank you so much for listening.